Well, I'm on with Jon Gay today, a guy I hope is going to be my BFF moving forward. We met at a little event, a chamber event here in Troy, Michigan. And I think you and I were asking questions of the guest speaker, and I loved how proactive you were about actually, solving some problems that were in the room. I like to
thank you.
right away.
That part of my job as a podcast producer, Michael, and thank you for having me on, is tech support. I think, for my clients, when we want to record a 30-minute podcast, I always block an hour worth of time because somebody might not have the right mic selected on their computer. Somebody might have a tech issue. Somebody can't find headphones, and the list goes on. If there's been a problem, I've solved it, which coincidentally makes me a lot better at tech support for my 68-year-old mother and 71-year-old father when I go home to visit them and fix whatever I need to be fixed around the house.
What do you charge mom and dad for per hour?
My mom is a big baker, so as long as she sends me home with baked goods, I call it even.
Excellent. We also have music in common. You made a living for a long time as a DJ. Mm-hmm. In what city?
Several. So I started my career after graduating from Syracuse in 2002. I started my career in Burlington, Vermont, was there for 7 years, 2004 to 2011. From there, got my big break to go from a small market to a big market, came here to Detroit in 2011. Was in Detroit at Channel 955 for 9 months as a night guy, 9 months as a midday guy. From there, budget cuts happened. I went down to New Orleans, ran a radio station called Voodoo 104 for 3 years, and then came back to Detroit because, as they say on Good Will Hunting, I had to go see about a girl. So came back to Detroit, worked one more radio job in Detroit at 98.7 AMP Radio before I called it a career.
That's an amazing lineage, man. Maybe not the golden age of radio.
Well, I look at it as I kind of came in at the perfect time because I came in when radio was still radio before it really kind of took a dive in terms of popularity in the last 5 or so years. But I also came in at a time where the technology was really cool and what you could do with editing phone calls, and gone are the days of razor blades and reel-to-reels, and everything was on computer at that point. So I had a little bit taste of the old stuff at the beginning of my career. By the time I got out, the technology was fantastic.
We should clarify for our listeners and watchers. And by the way, if you're listening on Podbean, any podcast format, you can catch the video version of this recording on the Michael Angelo Caruso YouTube channel. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can listen to the audio versions of any of my podcasts on the different platforms. When Jon says razor blades, he's not talking about cutting, and he's not talking about Coke. He's talking about splicing tape.
I got into radio a little too late for the Coke, I gotta say. I'm told that was much bigger in the 70s and the 80s. I didn't graduate college till 2002.
Hence my comment about not being in the golden age of radio.
Indeed.
And in the music business, we did the same thing. This is analog, everybody. Analog. Mm-hmm. It was before digital. And the only way to edit was to actually take a piece of metal, a razor blade, and cut the tape, splice it together. And then you could make magic things happen in the studio, whether it was a radio studio or a recording studio. Mm-hmm. Jon's going to tell us some great, and he teased me about this, that's how I know he's going to deliver music stories, celebrity stories, if you will. I don't know how tawdry it's going to get. I know the man's a professional, but I promise it'll be worth your listen if you want to hang in there. Before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you're doing these days, Jon, because you made a very interesting transition from radio to podcast. Mm-hmm. And in the family of audio productions, I suppose they're first cousins.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy jump to make. One of the things I find about podcasting is you have to be interesting, and there's no time for DJs to be interesting. If you've got a personality on radio, it's almost wasted.
Yeah, I think nowadays, Michael, that they call spoken word format, which is talk, news, and sports, and of course morning shows on music stations that they talk a lot. Those folks have room for personality, but radio, and I could talk for hours about this, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, but radio told the DJs in 2010 or so when new ratings methodology came out, hey, shut up and play the music. People don't like DJs that talk for too long. Well, they don't like bad DJs to talk for too long, but they told all the DJs to shut up. And that was great, except at that point, you're listening to somebody else's playlist. And then a year or two later, Spotify and Pandora come along, and radio really shot itself in the foot because they took the personality out of it, which is what differentiated it from all those other platforms. Yeah. I get really fired up about this. I'm sorry. So, So I got let go from my last radio job the week after my wedding in 2017, and was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I had a lot of experience marketing. I sell things on the air as a radio DJ for 15 years. So I tried social media marketing, all kinds of jobs. Got one social media marketing job at a small company that lasted 3 months before they had to lose my salary. And I'm like, well, what do I do? And a guy by the name of Seth Ressler, who works for Jacobs Media here in Metro Detroit, got connected with him, and he had a podcast called The Debrief about the arts and entertainment scene around Detroit. I came on as his producer. His co-host left. I slid into the co-host chair, and he told me, he's like, you can make money creating branded podcasts for businesses. And this is like 2018 or so, and it wasn't quite as big then as it is now. I was like, I'm a people pleaser. I'm not a business owner. Like, I could be doing stuff and asking people for money, but as it would turn out, Seth was right. And I started creating clients, building a little bit of word of mouth. And now I help businesses create content that is a branded content for their business to promote themselves in sort of a new, basically the hottest medium going right now. Some clients I just edit the podcast. Some clients I produce and just record the sit-in on the recording. And then for some, I use my radio background and co-host the show with them.
I love it. And congratulations on the transition.
Thank you.
I had lunch today with a magazine publisher here in Detroit, and it occurs to me that a lot of business owners back in the day when print ad was like the only thing you could do, you might get lucky and get an interview on the radio, but really it was that whatever you could put in that four-corner ad, whether it was a half page or a full page ad, the graphics, the copy, and the photo. And these days, it is so much easier to sell your business if you can get anybody who can speak, who's articulate, who's mildly interesting. You get them in an audio format, or even better, a video format for the people that like to watch, and have them express themselves in ways you never could in a magazine ad. I don't know why every business owner doesn't venture into at least being a guest on podcasts. I would say probably not everybody's suited to host one. Mm-hmm. But many of them should think about that as well. Because with hosting, I'm sure you teach this, you can get guest hosts, you can get guests for the podcast. There's all kinds of ways to put it together.
Absolutely. And, the video versus audio thing is another interesting thing, too. I know you do a lot with video, and some of my clients do a lot with video. What I say about audio is that audio goes where video can't. I always tell my clients you can't watch a YouTube video while you're driving, or at least you really shouldn't. Or while I'm out walking my dog in the morning, I'm listening to podcasts. And audio creates a bond in the brain that makes it more memorable than video. If you think about your favorite morning show host that you grew up listening to, if you were here in Detroit, if it was Paul W. Smith, Dave and Chuck, Drew and Mike, Mojo, whoever it was, you felt like you knew them personally, because with audio, it makes your brain work harder to create a picture as opposed to sitting there in what we used to call the boob tube, because the picture's right there in front of you. In the radio, your brain is more engaged and you're more active with all audio formats.
Yeah, the other thing that happens for me anyway, and I know everybody's different, is that when I'm just listening, I am somehow more dedicated to the content.
That's why it's the physiology of the brain. Yeah.
And the way I explain it to myself is, Flintstone explanation, is because there are so many inputs when you've got video and audio. I mean, imagine there are 5 senses. Imagine while you're listening and watching, somebody's rubbing your back and you're smelling bacon and you're tasting something else. Now all 5 senses are working overtime, just like that. It's like that old song.
We've gone from cocaine to a back rub and bacon. This is a wild ride so far, Michael.
Wait till you see the highlight reel, the trailer. But the brain, my brain anyway, my Flintstone brain can't multitask like that. But when I'm just listening to audio, man, I'm all yours. I'm doing an audio book right now, the new Mike Rowe book, which is, I think it's called something like That's the Way I Heard It. Mm-hmm. It's called take off on the old Paul Harvey series. And now you know the rest of the story.
Right.
Remember that?
I do. I worked at some radio stations that ran that Paul Harvey bit every morning. Yep.
Probably some that still run it. I couldn't believe that Casey Kasem got his top 10 recycled.
I can, because good content is sometimes hard to find. And look at pop music now. Half the stuff out there is sampling older stuff. Yeah.
So tell us more about what you do for the businesses before we get into the tawdry celebrity stuff. a business could contact you, and you work with anybody, right? They don't have to be in the Detroit area.
No, it's funny, in the pandemic, I was one of the lucky ones. In 2020 is when my business really took off because a lot of folks were home and they were creating and consuming content. So I'm right here, as you can see, in my home studio in my basement, and 95% of my clients I record remotely. I use software that's very similar to Zoom, that it makes it sound like you and I are in the same room, whether you're in Detroit, Denver, Dallas, or Dubai. So it's not going to matter with the power of the internet and the way technology is, as long as you have a decent enough microphone. And I can explain that to people offline as well. We can be, or there are some folks here in the local Detroit area that I have a mobile studio I can bring right to your office and record with you. I've done that with a couple of clients as well. We did that with Care House of Oakland County, which is a organization that deals with victims of child abuse, whether it's physical, mental, social, psychological, sexual. And we wanted to tell some stories, and we had in showcase and a branded podcast for Care House the work they do to work with victims and help them recover and live, great lives. So these were interviews we really couldn't do just over Zoom. It was much more important to do it in person. So in a situation like that, we were able to do that, and we got some really great content.
Yeah. And if you're thinking about doing this, you should get a coach like Jon, as somebody to show you the shortcuts. I can tell you he's given me a couple of tips. I'm not a client yet, but he's given me a couple of tips because he's that kind of person. And a good coach will save you not only lots of money, but lots of time, and perhaps most importantly, frustration. Because if you're rich, you don't mind spending the money, but you still get frustrated.
And I always ask clients what the value of their time is. If they record a podcast, but it takes them 6 hours to edit it, what's that 6 hours of your time worth? If you can Dropbox me the file and I'll clean it up, and I've got the software and the tips and tricks and experience to cut out the ums and ahs and likes and you-knows, and then fix some poor quality audio issues that we all run into, and go from there.
You got to like a vendor that pays his own freight, everybody. Jon Gay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's jagindetroit.com. If you are one of those people that can multitask, we're going to tell you some stories from the music business while you're surfing the internet for Jon. Jon, it's JAG, J-A-G, his initials, by the way. Jon Gay is his name, jagindetroit.com. In the speaking business, we call it a signature story. It's the story that you never leave out of the campfire. Leave it out of the keynote speech. You want to open with that, or you want to save it for the big finish?
I'll tell you what, I will tease a group and a single, and I'll let you pick which one goes first. So okay. I've got a really great story about an interaction that I had with Ryan Seacrest, which was one of the worst and best moments of my career all at once. And then I've also got meeting my holy trio of celebrity bucket lists artists that I wanted to meet, and 3 very different artists for very different reasons. They are Bret Michaels, Carrie Underwood, and Steven Tyler. So you want to hear Seacrest or the trio first?
Let's open with Seacrest, the best and the worst moment. Wow. Simultaneously.
So I was working in New Orleans, and American Idol auditions came to town. And my station actually, Voodoo 104, ran Ryan Seacrest's show from 10A to 2P. I was the afternoon guy, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. after him. And I emailed his people and said, hey, can I get an interview with Ryan? I know he's got 30 jobs and he's really busy. Does he have 10 minutes that he can do a quick interview with me? Yeah, be at the convention center at 4:20 p.m. whatever. He'll do an interview with you. Fantastic. So I go down to the convention center with our web girl Ashley, who is a great coworker, and I had her videotape the interview on my iPhone, and I had my microphone plugged into my iPhone to go back and forth with Seacrest. And he was a great interview. He talked about growing up as a radio kid, driving the station van in Atlanta, talking about going to a barbecue at the Kardashian house, watching the interactions of the people there and thinking, boy, this would make a great TV show. That's how Keeping Up with the Kardashians got started. He gave me this incredible interview. So it could not have been a nicer guy. So we finished. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. I go off to the side, put my headphones in, listen back to the interview. At the very beginning of the interview, I unwittingly pulled the microphone halfway out of the jack on my phone, and I had none of the audio. All I had was white noise for 20 minutes. I don't remember if I've ever cried during my career, but that's as close as I've ever gotten, Michael.
Well, you were recording from two sources. What was the other source?
I was recording from one source and didn't have it.
You had video and audio?
No, I recording everything on the phone. The microphone plugged in for the audio and the video from the phone. It was all in one place and it was gone.
Wow.
And I was crushed. So I had a promo that I would run during Ryan's show in the midday every day to talk about what was coming up that afternoon with me. Right. So the next day's promo was, hey, it's Jag. Got to talk to Ryan Seacrest yesterday. Great guy, great interview. And then something awful happened. I'll tell you about it this afternoon. Well, I had emailed his people and said, hey, any chance I could get 5 more minutes with him? If not, I understand. I'm the one that messed up. It's my fault. I screwed up. If not, well, he might have 5-10 minutes for you. Come to the convention center again this day. Okay. So he was picked up from his hotel room in his car, or his driver, had the radio station on so he could hear how his show was sounding, and heard the promo. So he walks in and sees me. He goes, hey man, I heard the promo. What happened to the interview? So here I am about to tell Ryan Seacrest, the biggest name at the time in radio, that I blew it with my interview with him on a tech issue. So it's Ryan, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Here's what happened. And he goes, oh, no, it's no big deal. That's happened to me. We can start it over. And he redid the interview with me.
Wow.
So to this day, if anybody says something mean or snarky about Ryan Seacrest, I will tell them that story because I have nothing but respect for a guy who is so big in the industry, but made time not once, but twice for a local DJ in New Orleans. So that's my Ryan Seacrest story.
Bravo. That's good. What year was this?
This was, I want to say 2014 or 15, 2015, I think.
So it was he was in Kardashians at that time doing the show.
Yeah, he had made a mint off of the Kardashians doing that show, as had all of them, obviously. So
yeah. And you're right, he's always had 6 jobs. He was, I think he's still working with American Idol.
Yep, still doing American Idol on ABC, still doing a morning show on Kiss FM in Los Angeles, and now co-hosting with Kelly Ripa and Regis's old chair.
Yeah, but I don't think that's where he's getting his big money. I think he gets his big money as a producer, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at the Kardashians, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, people love him on camera, and they love listening to him. Yep. He still has his radio show?
Still has mornings on Kiss FM in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I don't know. One of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur is if you've got to be there to do it by the minute, you can't scale because there's only so much time.
A lot of the show, though, is pre-recorded because if he's on from 6 to 10 a.m. Pacific time, that's 9 to 1 Eastern, and he's live on television in New York at 9 a.m. every day. So a lot of the show is pieced together with producers.
Interesting. And Dick Clark, and I think he modeled his career after Dick Clark, who did Bandstand, famously. He probably winnowed Bandstand. If Bandstand was on for an hour, I'll bet Dick Clark was in the studio for 65 minutes.
Yeah.
He's out his system.
Absolutely.
And he's producing Rockin' New Year's Eve, and he owns these other game shows and stuff, and that's where I think they start really making their money. Mm-hmm. But kudos to him and you, man. You hung in there. Somebody else might have turtled on that, not and given up on it. And kudos to him for understanding and being gracious enough. I'm sure he didn't know you were going to tell this story the rest of your life, but it doesn't hurt that he's coming off as a good guy yet again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. All right, so we have Steven Tyler and Bret Michaels from Poison and Carrie Underwood.
Yes, good memory. Okay.
What's going on?
So, there are 3. I don't know which order to tell, so I guess I'll tell them in chronological order. So, Aerosmith was playing the Palace here in Detroit in 2012, and I grew up in Boston. They are my favorite band of all time. I love Aerosmith. And so called in a favor with the record label and said, hey, are they doing a meet and greet at the Palace? Like, they're my favorite band of all time. I'd love to meet them. Yeah, we can do it. So I went with my friend, now wife, Ellen, backstage at the Palace. And you said, hey, listen, the people who paid $500 for the meet and greet, they get to go first. Oh, yep, no problem. You go right ahead. So it was this little staircase at some area in the Palace. I don't remember where. And we had to wait. It was those little kid backpacks with the leash. Ellen was going to have to put one of those on because like, is it time yet? Is it time to go? Is it time to go? Is it time to go? So So finally comes time to go down to meet them, and I had my line all ready to go, and I said to Steven Tyler, "Thank you for writing a song about every girl my best friend or I dated in high school." And he laughed, and he's like, "Oh man, thanks." And we had a lovely conversation. And you talk about with Seacrest being a nice guy, you meet your favorite artist of all time, and you're just hoping they're going to be a nice guy, because if they're not, it's going to ruin it for you. So it was Steven Tyler and Joe Perry. Joe Perry did not want to be there. He barely said 2 words the entire time. So a little bit bummed that Joe Perry wasn't very friendly. Maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. But Steven Tyler could not have been nicer, and I was just over the moon that he lived up to expectations. So that was Steven Tyler of Aerosmith.
Let's talk for a second. I read Steven Tyler's autobiography. Did you read it?
Was that Walk This Way?
I think so.
Yes, I read that as well.
And,
Yep.
and he talks, of course, about growing up in Boston and how they got discovered. And I didn't realize he was so young when he wrote Dream On. He's 17 years old, I think.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the lyrics, thinking back when you were 17, so worldly and so like an old soul,
What's crazy is that song is, I believe, next year 50 years old.
That is crazy.
73, I believe it was.
That is crazy. And I listen to that song now. You're an audio guy, and I know a little bit about music. And you hear a little bit of that splicing sloppiness that we had in the 70s before they could fix it with auto-tune and click tracks and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Particularly in the guitar solo of all things. And the guitar is amazing on that song as well. Perry was, I think, equally as young.
Yeah, they were about the same age, yep.
Yeah, amazing career for the whole band. It's amazing body of work. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Who do you got?
Let me tell you. Let me tell you Carrie Underwood next. Okay. So Carrie Underwood. The reason I wanted to meet her is because she's my celebrity crush. She is. I think she is just the most beautiful woman on the planet. To the point where if she's on TV, my wife will yell from the other room, "Hey, Carrie's on TV. You might want to come in here."
She's American.
Yeah, American Idol. She won American Idol.
American Idol. That's where she came from, right?
Yep. So. Okay. So at Mardi Gras in New Orleans, I'm not sure if you've ever been, Michael, but it's a party. And one of the big crews, KREWE, one of the big crews is the crew of Endymion, and their parade would go by our radio station and into the Superdome for a private concert, and there's a lot of money involved. They would always have an A-list artist do a private show for them at the Superdome in New Orleans. So Carrie Underwood was in the parade and doing the show that year. And my boss in New Orleans ran the country station, and he knew I had this biggest crush on Carrie Underwood. So we're at the parade. They're going by the station. And it's Mardi Gras. We're all drinking. It's part of the culture there. I've got cargo shorts on with a flask of Jack Daniels in each pocket. I've got my Red Sox Nation Louisiana red T-shirt on. And I'm talking to Don, and my boss, and the record label, and I said, "Hey, I think she's amazing. If she was ever in town to do a show, if she's ever wanted to come by the radio station, I'd love to say hi to her someday." So Don, great guy, one of the best bosses I ever had, pulls me aside and goes, "Hey, question for you. You think you can sober up in the 20 minutes it'll take to walk over to the Superdome?" "Yep, boss, I'm good. Those moments where the adrenaline overrides the alcohol? Yep, I'm ready. I'm good. Let's go. Let's go." So we walk over to the Superdome, and this is a Mardi Gras ball. People are in tuxedos and full evening gowns. I'm in a T-shirt and cargo shorts. And we walk into this holding room, and I tell you, Michael, when she walked into the room, that record scratch noise, the room just stopped dead cold. She is that stunning in person. She walked into the room and everybody froze on a dime. So I got to talk to her for about 5 minutes. My wife's texting me, "Please don't look drunk in the picture." Somehow I didn't. I said to her, "I really liked your song Last Name. I thought it was going to cross over to pop, to CHR, Before He Cheats did, which was like the #1 song of 2007. It crossed over from country to pop." She said, "I'm sorry, what do you mean by CHR?" I said, "Oh, pop radio." "Oh." So I taught Carrie Underwood an industry term, and we had a brief 5-minute conversation, got a picture. She was very, very nice, and she put on a great show. Her and Jennifer Lopez are the only 2 people I've seen that when they walk into a room, they stop the entire room dead in its tracks.
Interesting. I know J-Lo's been idolized endlessly since her career got going. You know, everybody's got their favorites. And you sometimes you scratch your head and wonder how some people hang out at the top of the pantheon, you know. That's terrific. And J-Lo's been talking lately about the mistake that she made taking the halftime show. She didn't like having that just a short number of minutes. I think she had to share her time at the halftime show.
I read that, but it was Shakira. Was it Shakira that you did the show with? I think
so. I can't who the co-star was, but I thought too. You know, if you have the whole halftime show to yourself, it's still not a lot of time.
It's like 12 minutes. It's a mini concert. Yeah. I mean, you've got the biggest audience in the entire world of the whole year, but you don't have much time to do much. The 3 or 4 songs are just snippets. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Bret Michaels.
Before I give you Bret Michaels, is there a favorite halftime show that you remember from the years being a music guy?
It's a trick question because production values have changed so much since they first started doing it. This last one that featured black talent, I don't know how they build it, if they build it rap or hip hop. Yeah,
it's kind of that Southern California
doctor. Better than I thought it was going to be.
I was pretty happy with that too. I thought that was, and being 41 years old, like that's my wheelhouse. The late 90s is when I was in high school and college. That whole time of music of Dre and Snoop and Eminem and all that, for sure. That was a great show.
I can tell you my least favorite halftime show. Mm-hmm. You may agree, because everybody scratched their head when he got the nod. He got the nod, I think, because of tenure. He certainly has a good body of work, but he wasn't a halftime guy. Tom Petty.
Yeah, God rest his soul. I hate not to speak ill of the dead, but yeah, not the best halftime show for sure.
Yeah.
One of mine was the U2 after September 11th, and it coincided with my Patriots winning their first Super Bowl. But having the banner with the names of 9/11 and Bono opens his jacket and he's got the American flag sewn inside, that was a really cool moment. I'll always remember that one.
They don't do anything halfway, U2.
No.
I think about that.
As I drink out of my Patriots mug, for those of you watching here on video.
I think about that a lot when I produce my own content. I try to think about, and I'm sure you do too, when you're producing or doing your own thing, is not just doing it the way everybody else would do it. You know, what's the extra icing? What's the
secret sauce?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's different, you know, when you're watching something that's already been done, you're trying to identify the secret sauce. When you're doing it yourself, you have to cook the secret sauce. It's a different.
You need the ingredients.
Process, man. Well, you don't even know what the ingredients are. No one even told you the ingredients, so you can go to the store to cook it.
You're throwing the pasta at the wall to see what sticks.
Kind of right. And YouTube's good at that. They marry the audio and the video.
Yes.
I don't know who does this stuff for them, and then they test it to see which one's better, the combination's better. Of course, they have all the money in the world to do the best tour ever.
Yeah, they're on my bucket list to see it live for sure. So the last on my bucket list is Bret Michaels. And you might say, what the heck does a 41-year-old, or at the time 35-year-old guy interested in Bret Michaels? And I save this for last because this is actually the best backstory. So, excuse me. So my best friend, my college roommate, Bill, was a huge Poison fan. For whatever reason, he loved 90s glam rock. And unfortunately, Bill was killed by a drunk driver when we were 25. And so at the time of the funeral, his friends reached out to Poison and said, hey, this guy was like a huge fan of your band. Like anything you could do or send for the funeral would be cool. And they sent neon purple and green flowers to the funeral home in classic Poison colors. And I don't know if this is Bret or his PR team or whoever it is. So as fate would have it, they were doing a small show at one of the local festivals in New Orleans while I was down there, Bret Michaels solo, rather. And I did the whole, and you've seen this, I did the whole phone call radio interview, promote the show the week before kind of thing. So we do the interview, and after we were done with the interview, I told him offline, I said, hey, listen, I mean, it might have been online, I don't remember, but I said, for what it's worth, I don't know if this is you or your team or who it is, but my best friend was a huge fan of yours. He was killed by a drunk driver. You guys sent flowers to the funeral, and I'll always remember that. Like, what a classy thing. That was really cool. Thank you so much. And he's, wow, man, that's a heck of a story. I'm sorry about your friend. Tell you what, come backstage at the show this weekend, and we'll do something for your buddy. Like, oh? So Go backstage at the show. I introduce myself, remind him about the interview we had done a few days prior. All right. So, are you familiar with the Poison song "Something to Believe In"?
I think so, yeah.
Yep. I've got video of this actually from Side Stage, where he says, all right, this next song, he dedicated it to military veterans and to a good friend of ours, Bill Leaf, who tragically lost his life, and he did the whole thing. And this is something to believe in. And he started playing the song. I get choked up telling the story. And I've got video, and I was able to put it online and share it on social with all of our friends and Bill's friends, and Bill's family got to see it and everything. And it was just one of those moments where, I could talk about where the radio industry is now and be sour about it, but in a 15-year career, I had some really unbelievably cool moments and experiences that I'll always cherish, and it was a lot of fun working in that industry.
Huh. We started talking about your podcast production company and how audio is the superpower, because if you can get in somebody's ear, like an earworm.
Yeah, exactly.
Eye worm. There's only earworms, everybody.
Yeah, but there are AirPods that
yes.
I got them in my pocket, actually. You pull them right out here. You get these little guys here and put them right in your ear. You're right in somebody's brain. You've got a direct line to their brain.
But think about that Bret Michaels announcement. You processed that. You didn't process it visually. It wasn't one of your other three senses. It was an auditory. You heard that, and it touched you. And it's so powerful that when you say it, even today, years later, and you hear yourself say it, it hooks you up.
It does, yeah, it really does.
And if that doesn't convince anybody listening to us today that audio has its own superpower, I don't know what would.
That is a masterful job of tying this together in the end. As a podcast producer, I've got to give you props, Michael. That's a great tie-in. That's well done.
That's because I got the razor blades out.
Ah, there you go. Well, I won't ask what's on them or what you're doing with them, but they're out.
Well, my brothers and I played in the music business in the 80s. We toured the country. We opened for acts like Corey Hart and Rick Springfield.
That's awesome.
Joan Jett. I have a few stories from those days as well.
Well, yeah, I've told you 3 or 4. Can you share one?
Yeah. Okay. Here's a story, and make of it what you will. I'll just tell you exactly what happened. So back in the day, if you opened for an act, first of all, you weren't paid usually to open for the act, and if you were paid, it was pittance. Mm-hmm. That's just how it worked. The more painful part of it was you usually worked with what they called half lights, half sound. Right,
not turned out to 11 like in Spinal Tap.
No, and it's kind of self-explanatory what's happening there. You're going to be less than you want to be, and certainly less than the opening act, because they've got to set up some sort of differential. Think of it this way.
Between you, the opener, and the headliner, yeah.
Talk show at night, you notice the host chair is 6 inches taller than the guest chair. It's being done to this day. And then probably the worst thing of all that can happen is if you couldn't get a photo with the people you opened for. Because we didn't have cell phones or anything. You had to actually have a real camera, a real photographer, and you had to get a photograph with the headliner. And we had no problem with Rick Springfield. We had no problem with Corey Hart. Most people are pretty decent about this because they all came up themselves.
Sure, yeah.
Joan Jett's manager's name was Elliot, and Johnny's in the back office, back room, green room, whatever. And we get a message to Elliot that wouldn't it be great if the opening act that you're not paying and giving half lights and half sound could have a photograph with Joan Jett. And the message comes out from Elliot that Joni, he called her Joni, is not available. But, we were reluctant to take no for an answer. So we actually found Elliot later, and he barked at us this time, not going to happen, guys. And so we have kind of a sad, I don't know if it's sad's the right word, disappointing memory about that gig. But her show was great. And I remember in her sound check, remember she did the remake of Tommy James, I think it was Tommy James, Crimson and Clover.
Okay, yep.
And there's like little thing where she goes, just like Tommy James did. I think she does her own like version of it.
Sure.
She sound checked on that one syllable for like 10 minutes before, because it had to be a certain way, I remember that too. I haven't told that story in a while.
One of my rules for life, and I got this from my Uncle Jeff, actually, if he's listening, but is that you should always be kind because everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. It's so easy to be mean. It's so easy to be nasty. It's so easy to be short with somebody if you're having a bad day. Maybe Joan Jett was having a bad day, but it really doesn't hurt to just be nice to people because it will generally come back around. I mean, look at the Ryan Seacrest and the Steven Tyler stories. Like that's a story. Those are stories I'll always tell because they didn't have to be nice to me. They don't know me from Adam, but they were, and that went a long way with me.
Yeah, I love it. Let's finish up with a little summary of your services for people in the podcast production business. Give us a typical scenario. A CEO calls you, probably says, our marketing is less than. People tell me I should get into podcasting. How does that conversation go?
Well, first I want to qualify them as a lead because there are people, anybody can do a podcast. And what's your reason? Is your reason, hey, my friends say I'm funny, I should have a podcast? That's probably not going to get you as far as, hey, we want to build a podcast into our overall marketing strategy. Right. So I want to find out from you how serious you are about podcasting, how you're committed to it. I will say, when I start with a client, I sign them to a finite contract as far as number of episodes, because with a podcast, if you say, I'm just going to do a podcast and do it forever and ever, and you know this from doing these interviews, Michael, it becomes one more thing on your to-do list, and it sometimes falls down the priority list. So I'll say, okay, let's come up with a plan to do 3-episode season, a 5-episode season, a 10-episode season, whatever it is. And let's plan out and roadmap those episodes. I once had a radio mentor tell me that doing a show is like driving a NASCAR. Do all your work in the pit, so all you've got to do is drive when the light turns green. So map out the show, who we're going to talk to, what we're going to cover, what talking points we're going to have. We'll map out all the shows. We'll record them, depending on my schedule and your schedule as the client. And then at the end of the 5 or the 10 episodes, we'll reconvene and say, okay, how did this go? Did we like this? Did we get any results from this? Is this something we want to keep doing? Or, hey, this was fun, but it wasn't for us. And I think the important thing is to remind clients when they start with a podcast is it's a branding tool. It's not going to be a revenue generator for 1 to 3 years after you start. Because like anything, if you build it, they will come. You have to build your show, create an audience, develop a relationship with that audience before you can monetize it. So, you probably didn't start with many viewers for these YouTube videos when you just started out. So it's a matter of putting the time and the effort in and being committed to doing it as opposed to wanting that quick fix and that easy money or anything like that. You're not going to get 1 million downloads out of the gate. You're not going to be Joe Rogan, love him or hate him, and you're not going to and you really got to put the time and the effort in and have a promotion strategy, which I can help you with as well. But put that together.
A quick callback. Sorry to interrupt. A quick callback to something we said earlier when we were talking about how Seacrest and Dick Clark managed their time. I always talk with my clients about 4 types of money: big money, small money, fast money, and slow money.
I like that.
For a lot of people, podcast is no money, even after 3 years. What percentage of business owners are actually trying to make money with a podcast versus, say, pump up their brand and maybe generate revenue through these types of messages?
That's a hard question for me to answer because I don't typically work with those who are trying to make it fast money. For me, it's a matter of create that, build that brand equity, use it as a marketing tool, but you can use it as a lead generation tool. Talk about your stereotypical sales or marketing funnel. For example, if I work with a handful of financial advisors, they may do 20, 30 episodes. If they have a client who's got a net worth or a nest egg of $1 million come in because they heard a podcast, the entire series is paid for itself because once you start managing the Joe Millionaire's money, you're good. So use it as a branding and a lead tool more than an instant revenue tool.
And it's a differentiator. You mentioned financial services. I think one of the biggest problem that industry has is everybody sounds the same.
Yeah.
Everybody you meet. You can call it whatever you want: financial advisor, wealth management, money management. It's all the same. And if you ask them, what's your secret sauce? They go, well, we'll help you save money on tax. Who doesn't say that? And so the differential, whatever that secret sauce is, you actually have a chance to express it if you get a few minutes with somebody. I mean, think of it this way, everybody. It's like an extension of the sales call that you eventually hope to get.
Absolutely.
Or maybe it generates more sales calls because they heard you in a podcast format.
And you're skipping the first couple parts of that funnel because they're breeding the familiarity by them listening to you. They know who you are. You've established your authority in the field. You've established your credentials. Yeah. I have clients that use it as part of their onboarding emails when they go out, when somebody checks out their website. Oh, hey, here's me on a podcast explaining this theory to you.
Yeah, I love it. You are a gift to the city of Detroit. I'm glad you landed here.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
The website is JAG in Detroit, JAGIN Detroit, DETROIT.com. Jon, I hope we get a chance to do some more together. But meanwhile, thank you very much for being on my podcast today. I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much, Michael. Take care.